Nearly 3 million New Yorkers don't earn enough money to make ends meet. The recent True Cost of Living report published by the United Way of New York and the Fund for the City of New York says that nearly 1.3 million households across the city can't afford basic necessities.
Yeah, it's a real issue, right? And while the numbers are the highest in communities of color, single mothers are struggling the most, with 86% of them not able to cover costs. So joining us this morning is Grace Bonilla. She is the president and CEO of the United Way of New York City, such an important organization. So good morning, Grace. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dan and Hazel, for having me.
So, Grace, we know that families are struggling, right? Especially since the pandemic. But this is really the first report to showcase and highlight what exactly is happening. So what did you uncover?
That's exactly right. So the baseline for the report is the ACS of 2021, so we know that it's covering the years of the pandemic. What we uncovered is that since the last report, where we found that 36% of New Yorkers that are working age were income insecure, that number has risen to 50% of New Yorkers.
So what do you use to measure that, though, specifically?
Absolutely. So as I said, like a baseline is the ACS, but we're also, the reason
What's
that
the ACS, just to clarify?
Of course, the American Community Survey used by the United States, by the federal government. So the reason that this report is more precise than any other report that's used on a federal level is because we are looking at the cost of basic cost in families, so childcare, transportation, healthcare, housing. We're also looking at the makeup of different families. A family that has a preschooler is more likely to have higher costs than someone who has someone in high school, for example.
So single mothers, Latino immigrants, they are the ones facing the biggest struggle. Can you kind of zero in on those two specific topics?
Absolutely. So when you start to really disaggregate it by race and ethnicity and gender, what we have found is a single mom living in New York City who's Latina is 80% more likely to be living income insecure.
And in what borough did you find was the biggest?
Unfortunately, what we found is that in the Bronx, there was the biggest increase of cost to living and the lowest increase to wages. So Central Bronx was really the most impacted. After that, what we saw, the other findings that are interesting is that rents in Queens are the highest they have ever been.
Wow.
And in Central Brooklyn, the cost of living is also really just separated out from what people are earning.
Right, and if you think about it, because Queens was on the list of all these up-and-coming neighborhoods, right? People got priced out of Manhattan, so they moved into the outer boroughs. The outer boroughs saw the popularity, so the landlords raised the rents. It's like this whole timeline of events, right? But some of these topics are not new. Was it the pandemic and the fact that interest rates, inflation, and people lost their jobs, all of that was a contributing factor?
Absolutely. When we think about the folks that had to make a sacrifice to stay home, to take care of kids who weren't going to school, who took care of parents who didn't have a home health aide that could come in, most of the burden fell on women. And what we're finding is that it fell on Latino women, Black women, Asian women.
Where does it stand in Manhattan? I mean, you're talking about Bronx being really tough, but what about Manhattan? Everyone thinks, oh, well.
So Manhattan's always been tough, right? Since 2000 when we've done this study, Manhattan's always been among the highest. It continues to be among the highest, but the largest discrepancy and division between cost of living and salaries are definitely in the outer boroughs.
You know, it's interesting, while all of this plays out, right, and this report takes a look back, there's been this whole wave of asylum seekers and migrants who have now come to New York City, right? How do you think that's going to impact these numbers and everything you're seeing play out?
I think we have to see everything in context. The last thing I want to do is scapegoat people who are really looking for assistance. And the reality is that when we look at the measures that we used, folks who are undocumented or non-citizens are undercounted. So we are really talking about New Yorkers who are living here for a long time with the cost of childcare, transportation, housing going up. Will things feel worse for social services agencies who are trying to support asylum seekers? Absolutely. But in the grand scheme of things, the thing that our policymakers can do is really control costs and raise wages.
Yeah, what's really sad is most people can't get out of that hole. And like we were speaking with people earlier this week who were saying that, I can't even save money. You know, there's no way.
Right.
You spend more than half of your income just on rent alone.
Right.
But we
that's right.
Yeah.
But thank you. It's such an important issue, but I think it's an opportunity for us to make some really good and solid policy decisions to address the issue.
We'll see what comes out of it. Grace, important work that you're doing over there at United Way. Appreciate your time and for explaining this new report for us. Appreciate it.